So, continuing on from part 1 of this Mateus Asato inspired lesson, we're going to learn another lick that I wrote in an attempt to emulate Mateus Asato's playing style. The lick in the previous video was an alternate picked major pentatonic shred thing. And this lick isn't really what I would call shredding. It focuses more on Mateus's masterful use of double stops and slides. And it sounds like this. You're about to hear that slowed down, but just to remind you that the bonus content for these Mateus inspired lessons at bulletproofguitarplayer.com includes the tab for everything played in these YouTube videos, the backing track, and 3 additional lick lessons that you won't find anywhere else on the internet based on the playing style of Mateus Asato. You can access them with a monthly or annual subscription plan. The monthly plan costs $12 per month and it can be cancelled at any time, so you can stay for as long as you need to. And the annual plan is on offer at $120 per year. That's giving you 2 months of site access for free. Let's hear that lick slowed down. And again at an even slower tempo. What I did in the previous video was I broke the lick down by first approaching the theory and discussing the notes involved and how to visualize it on the fretboard. And then after that, I focused on the technique. But for this one, I think it would make more sense and be more appropriate to discuss both simultaneously. So we'll split this one into 2 parts, starting with this. This is another lick in E major that's using the notes of the E major and major pentatonic scales. If you want to learn the difference between the two, I talked about that in the previous video, but I also teach that in my first online course, Bulletproof Guitar Player Part 1, Master the Fretboard, that is linked in the description box. So in this first part, I'm doing this thing that Mateus will often do on the B and high E strings, which is to play a double stop that involves just one note on the B string, but several notes on the high E string played with hammer-ons and pull-offs. Now normally when people play double stops, it's usually 2 notes moving at once like this, which Mateus also does a lot of, but I also love it when he plays lines like this where one of the notes is static and ringing out whilst you're hearing these other notes move around on the opposite string. Now I'm positioning myself out of this major pentatonic scale position. So I've got my index finger barring the 12th fret on the top 2 strings, and my middle and 3rd fingers are at frets 14 and 15 on the high E string. So I start by picking fret 12 on the B string, then I pick 15 on the high E and play this hammer-on and pull-off sequence that sounds like this. Now, as you play that, you want to make sure that the note on the B string is ringing out whilst those hammer-ons and pull-offs are happening. Now, what are those notes on the high E string? Well, fret 16 is G sharp, which is the major 3rd of E, a note that is found naturally in the major and major pentatonic scales, as is fret 14, which is F sharp. That's the major 2nd of E, and fret 12 is of course the root note, E. But what about that first note that you pick on the high E string? Fret 15, the note G. You can kind of hear there, if I play them both together, it sounds very minor and not major friendly. And that's because it's the flat 3rd of E, which is a note that you won't find in the scale formulas for the major and major pentatonic scales. If you want to know why that note is used here, I explained that in detail in the previous lesson, where I teach another Mateus Asato inspired lick. So maybe go and watch that first and then come back here once you're ready to. Anyway, after you've played this, you're going to play this, which is just a pull off on the B string and then going back to the root note on the high E string. And then to finish the first part of the lick, you play this. That's a grace note slide that's moving up and down one fret on both strings and then ending in a pull off on the B string. So because it's a grace note, it's very rapid, and so you don't actually hear the pitch of the notes that you're sliding up to. And if you did lean on those notes for too long, it would sound very ugly. But fortunately, because it's a grace note slide, you're just sort of hearing the movement of you sliding up and down by one fret. So let's listen back to that first part of the lick again, and then we'll move on to part two. Actually, before we move on, I should say that for the timing of this lick, the first note falls on the and of beat 4. So if I count the beats like so, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, that and after beat 4 is where you place the first note. For example, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Alright, we're about to move on to the second half of this lick, but before we do that, I just want to say that if you're enjoying this lesson, if you're learning something, please consider subscribing to the channel. It just takes 1 second or 2 to scroll down and hit that button, and it really helps me out and ensures that you don't miss content from me in the future. Now here's part 2 of the lick. So you start out by having your index finger move to fret 11 on the G string. You pick that with a downstroke and hammer on to 13, and then have your middle finger positioned at fret 12 on the B string, and with an upstroke, you're going to rake the pick over the B and G strings. See how I'm dragging the pick over those two strings with an upstroke? Then with your third finger, you're going to slide down to fret 11, pull off, and then with a downstroke, pick fret 11 on the D string and pull off like so. After that, we've got some of the signature Mateus Asato slidey double stops on the G and B strings. So you're going to start with your index finger, barring the 9th fret on those strings. You're going to pick that, then hammer onto 11 on the G and 10 on the B at the same time. Then slide up 2 frets. And pay attention to this next part. So we've made it up to here. You're then going to slide down 2 frets, then up 1, then down 1, and then pull off to the index finger bar at fret 9. So I'll play that again for you. So during that, you're only picking the first index finger bar and the rest is all slides. So you need to make sure that your fingers are applying a lot of pressure to the strings there to ensure that it sounds nice and strong. And directly after that, you're going to pick 11 and pull off to 9 on the D string. Then with your index finger barring the 9th fret on the D and G strings, downstroke and hammer on to fret 11 on both strings, perform a grace note slide up and down 1 fret, and then pull off to the 9th fret bar. And that's the end of part 2 of this lick. Let's put it all together. and together with the first part at a couple of different tempos. Now, when it comes to making the transition between those two parts, you end part 1 with your index finger at fret 12 on the B string. So this is where your index finger ends up at the end of part 1. But then part 2 starts with you placing that same finger at fret 11 on the G string, which could be a bit of an awkward transition to make if you're not used to doing this. So what you want to try and do there is, when you're making the transition, be sure to pull your fretting hand back a bit, but then also pull your index finger sort of diagonally from the B string at fret 12 to the G string at fret 11. Now, if you enjoyed these free lessons on my Mateus Asato inspired licks, but you want more, I've added 3 bonus lick lessons as well as the tab files and backing track to the extra section of bulletproofguitarplayer.com, which is accessible with a monthly or annual subscription plan to the site. Subscribing gives you streamable access to both of my Bulletproof Guitar Player courses, which tell you what you need to know in order to break through the lost intermediate plateau and reach an advanced level of musicianship as a guitar player. It also gives you access to the monthly bonus content that I add to the site every month based on my free YouTube lessons like this one. So your subscription consistently grows in value at no additional cost to you. Really hope you enjoyed this lesson, and if you learned something, please consider subscribing for more and liking the video. That helps me out a lot. Cheers for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.